Hey, it's a rainy day here in southwestern Ontario. It's the April 12th, and I have a primary supporter, which I'm very thankful for. When he's able, he's quite a busy man. He's got a young child, and he's contracting. So contracting is really rough. Sometimes you're out there up a ladder on a roof without anybody else around. And as much as you can trust oneself and yourself in being on a solo mission, so to speak, you have to think about these things. Don't become complacent. And so where I'm going to lead into this is off of Military Family cmfmag.ca. This is fantastic publication. I support you, even though I don't know all your ethics and so on and so forth. But so far, just on the basis of information, this is fantastic. So this was published 4 days ago, and it's Defense Minister introduces legislation to modernize military justice system. And I agree with this because there's so much of the information, and there's so much of the laws and the rules, right, within the Defense Act, and that doesn't fall in line with the tenets of the actual DEP. They're actually in conflict because there's so much gray area and area for loopholes, legal loopholes, as is the jargon, by which repeat offenders use and abuse the lack of technicalities upon which the officers themselves can enforce the Defense Act. And then they're talking about transference between civilian and military operations, as far as with legislature and jurisprudence, because the harassment and the sexual misconduct has been a problem in the Canadian military for decades, and nobody really wanted to do anything about it because it was like, this is from an outside perspective, right? I'm not a current service member. I'm not in the regs, right? I'm not in the reserves. I'm here on my lonesome, and the way this works is, again, is that fear of reprisal and of dismissal with discharges, the threat of discharge, or cutting of pensions, or cutting of pay grades and ranks, that is not the military that I would want to serve in. Because if the threat of coming forward is enforced by these negativities, then it brings down the entire force itself, and then the country, because it's such an embarrassment and it's such an insult to the people that are actually putting the work in, day out, and then get passed over or get railroaded or run up the flagpole for being a good example to other people. And it's so easy to go after good people, and it's so hard to prosecute repeat offenders because they're good at it, or until they start becoming complacent, and then they become lazy and they slip up, and then that's how it always goes, when it comes to repeat offenders, or anyone along those lines. So it's very tough. It's very tough to be in the justice system or law enforcement as it is right now, especially after the betrayal and then the smear campaign against people like this by Black Lives Matter and other social movements, Antifa. I'm going to mention that, or the anti-fascist, not the extremists necessarily, but they're vigorously motivated, not just by external funding for these NGOs and these nonprofits, but also by the condoning of the behavior by the government because they don't intervene and they don't order intervention to stop these potentially violent protests. Now, I'm not, and with these statements, if I'm gonna correlate this to an example, I don't support the shutdown of the trucker protest, but at a certain point, it did need to stop. Their point was made, right? And especially when it comes to intellectual arguments that affect a vast number of people, is okay. So if we're gonna put it in the context of the vaccine, which was a hot button issue and triggers so many people. And then with environmentalism and the carbon tax, which is another chronic hot button issue, and it's still developing. The same with this painting here, into something that's concrete. And again, you have to, in order to take the abstracts and make it concrete, is very challenging intellectually. So I'm not surprised as to how much time it takes for the observation and the logical deduction to be made into a set of alterations and recommendations. So again, very challenging to be at the very top. We disrespect people so frequently, but we're not in their shoes. We're not responsible for an entire fucking country, right? I individually, if I'm gonna put this into understandable terms, with suicide prevention, I'm responsible for all the people for which watch my content, and and the impressions that I leave on other people throughout my entire life. And then I am also responsible for any work that I've done on any aircraft or any car or any bicycle or whatever else, because it actually matters. It really does. Every single action has an equal and opposite reaction. So the reaction to these misconduct charges is of course, and the harassment is of course these recommendations. So we'll get to this now for the NDA, which, National Defense Act, not non-disclosure agreement. Okay. And again, to remind people that the DEP, and then I'm looking at the ethics in Canadian forces, the actual texts, were published in around, this one was published in 2006, and then the latest revision of the DEP, I believe, was 2013. Yeah, Defense Engagement Program annual. Well, that says something different. That's not the ethics. Annual report 2016, 2017. So, well, this is what the upper brass does, and this is what is not immediately understandable by people lower in the ranks, and hence why there's a disconnect between the two of them. It's the same thing for any other civilian organization, because the people at the top are making the sales and making the deals and making the plans. Yeah, whatever happens in between, who fucking knows? And it really matters. This personalities really matter when it comes to leadership. Okay, 8 recommendations addressed in the proposed legislation include: the NDA should be amended. Again, when I say NDA here on from this moment in this video, it refers to the National Defense Act and not a non-disclosure agreement. The NDA should be amended to allow the governor and council to appoint to the position of a military judge anyone who is a barrister or advocate of at least 10 years standing at the bar of a province and who has been an officer or NCM of the CAF, including the reserve force, for at least 10 years. So that means anyone that has passed the bar and has been a lawyer for 10 years can now, irregardless of rank, can now be a judge instead of it just being an officer or the CO. Recommendation number 7, the Director of Military Prosecutions and Director of Defense Council Services should be appointed by the Governor and Council on the recommendation of the Minister of National Defense. The Director of Military Prosecutions and Director of Defense Council Services should hold office during good behavior for a term of 7 years, subject to removal by the Governor and Council at any time for cause, with the support of a resolution of the House of Commons to that effect. They should not be eligible to be reappointed for a further term of office. So what that means is that you can't be caught in anything, you can't be implicated in anything for 7 years. And if you screw up and you get prosecuted, you get charged or convicted, then your position as a judge in council, or so someone who passed the bar and has been serving for 10 years, to no longer be able to be a judge without review. Recommendation number 8, NDA should be repealed. If a power is to issue directives in respect of a particular prosecution is to remain, this power should, at minimum, be granted to the Minister of National Defense personally and not the Judge Advocate General. Any directive issued to the Director of Military Prosecutions should be required to be in writing and to be published in the Canada Gazette. The Minister of National Defense or the Director of Military Prosecutions should be authorized to direct that publication and direct that the publication be delayed at the latest until the completion of the prosecution of any relatable prosecution, if either considers this delay to be in the interest of the administration of military justice. So they want to rewrite the NDA in order to allow a bit more civilian oversight, and to pull the cover, pull the curtains back and let the daylight shine in. Recommendation number 10. Section 9.2 of the NDA should be amended to clarify the meaning of the JAG, Superintendents of the Administration of Military Justice in the Canadian Forces. At a minimum, the NDA should expressly provide that the superintendents must respect the independence of military prosecutors, military defense counsel, and other statutory actors within the military justice system, which means civilians cannot and will not interfere. But they can. It leaves room for a veto if the case does warrant such an intervention, either because of inherent biases, or because because of conflicting interests, or something along those lines. Recommendation number 13, Section 18.3 of the NDA should be amended to provide that the Canadian Forces Provost Marshal be appointed by the Governor and Council and hold office during pleasure. So what does it mean, hold office during pleasure? Which means that the presidents can remove that person in that position at any time. And so they have the sword of Damocles hanging over their head. Did I skip something here? Okay, yeah, there we go. The Chief of the Defense Staff should accordingly have no authority to remove the Canadian Forces Provost Marshal. Now, these are just different positions. I'm not exactly familiar with them. I'm learning about this with you as we do this video. The Canadian Forces Provost Marshal should be responsible to the Minister of National Defence in the performance of his duties and functions. Reference to the Vice Chief of the Defence Staff in Section 18.5 of the National Defence Act should consequently be replaced by references to the Minister of National Defence. Moreover, Section 18.6 of the National Defence Act should be amended to provide that the Canadian Forces Provost Marshal report annually to the Minister of National Defence on the activities of the Canadian Forces Provost Marshal and the military police during that year. So, Provost Marshal. The officer in charge of military police and thus responsible for military discipline in a large camp, area, or city. So I'm looking at the pictures of the U.S. military provost marshals. So you have 2 black women and a whippersnapper. There's one there is in the Marines, Lieutenant Colonel. Looks like he's got some killer instinct. All right, the Canadian Forces Provost Marshal here. So the top of the top cop. Let's see, where's his name? S. Trudeau. Hello, sir. How are you? Now, I imagine not every Trudeau likes Trudeau. Okay, back to this. The National Defence Act should be amended to restyle the Canadian Forces. Of course, this is recommendation number 14. Provost Marshal as the Provost Marshal General, and to provide that the Canadian Forces Provost Marshal hold a rank that is not less than Brigadier General. So in other words, if you don't have life experience, you can't get to these positions because you haven't seen how people behave. And the more well known you are for your ethics and who you are and your determination of character as a person, that allows you the privilege to be a judge and to judge other people. So in other words, you got to keep your whistle clean. There's a higher standard to bear than other people, and there's a lot more pressure. Recommendation number 15. Subsections 18.5 to 18.5 bracket 3 to 18.5 bracket 5 of the National Defence Act should be repealed. For greater clarity, Section 18.5 of the National Defence Act should be amended to provide that the general supervision and authority of the Vice Chief of the Defence Staff or of the Minister of National Defence, if Recommendation 13 is implemented, to issue general instructions or guidelines to issue general instructions or guidelines do not include a power to give directions regarding specific law enforcement decisions in individual cases. So basically, the civilians cannot. The civilian council cannot intervene with the provost marshal or any of the internal mechanisms and jurisprudence of the JAG, which is what I would want personally. Let's keep them separated. There's different cultures going on here. That part is obvious. There's different responsibilities, and then there's different I don't know. There's different results. I want to say results, or like I don't know. I don't know how to describe this right now. Okay, and the last one here is subsection 250.19 of the National Defense Act should be amended to provide that any persons, including any officer or NCM, who believes to be on reasonable grounds that any officer or NCM or any senior official of the department has improperly interfered with a policing duty or function may make an interference complaint to the Military Police Complaints Commission. I'm surprised you couldn't do that before. But there was this conception is that the police get in the way of the chain of command. But the police are there to enforce the chain of command and then also the individual responsibilities. And so that people don't overstep their bounds and start power tripping and then getting drunken disorderlies or whatever else, the classic movie scenario where you have all of the enlisted people, they're out drinking, fighting, carousing, whatever else, hitting on all the local women, trying to get themselves, get a little wet. Get a little, or get a little wet. That makes it sound like they're on drugs or something. But trying to get some dance moves going there. Yeah. So all of this to me seems really reasonable. Without this coming from a position of ignorance, of course, without having any further observation or knowledge of the conduct of these missions, including that of the military police, to affect change within the institution itself. Of course, this is the thing, is that you run into a lot of roadblocks when it comes to an absolute authoritarian system. In some cases, in some interpretations, as fascist, right? That's what made the military a target, is because of the disciplined and organized system of existence. And it's very, this is very masculine, right? And this is why it is made into a target and torn down or disrespected, and the flags taken off the pole and kicked on the ground and rubbed in the mud, because it doesn't, the flag and the symbolism didn't mean anything to those people, that they didn't understand the consequences of their actions, or they did. And they did it anyway, which is even worse. Okay. So recap. This video is about the legislation by the Defense Minister, Bill Blair at this time. Hello, sir. Changing proposed target changes to modernize the military justice system. Okay, I will include the link to this video, and this is I would call this a secondhand source. So first-hand source is from the horse's mouth. Secondhand source is an article about talking to the horse. And then third-hand source is someone commentating about what the horse is saying in the article, or about the writer, some sort of critique or constructive criticism. Okay, so that's first, second, third person. Remember that. And then when it comes to any kind of investigation, as I said to one of the police officers when she came around to give me an interview, start from your most recent action and then work your way back to what you did this morning, what you had for breakfast, in what's it, chronological order. And that's the best way to exercise your memory. And these being the points, because this is an intellectual thing, this is abstract, and it will require you some random access memories up here to crunch the numbers, so to speak, on how this is actually going to work for you and what it means to you as a person and what it means to you as a service member. Okay. That's all I really have to say about this. I wanted to commentate about this because of my personal interest, and I have skin in the game here. I really do, and I'm here to help you as best I can, and as much of a butter bar as I am too. So, yeah, here we are. Thanks for watching. I hope you have a good Friday. And that's that, just before noon. So relax, things are changing. It's taken a while. This is a brand new era for the calf. And I hate that. I hate saying calf. It's like cafe au lait. Like a French breakfast. Oh my Lanta. All right. We'll see you later.